Welcome, this is King Rex. This is my ranking of every Bond film. I'm ranking all the films in the series, including the non official films. I watched No Time to Die for the first time maybe 2 months ago, and I decided to do a full ranking of the films. I decided to watch all the films, and then I decided to do my own ranking. After watching the rankings a few other people had online, these rankings are all based upon how much my personal enjoyment of the films and how well I think the films are overall. Based on what I think a Bond film should be, how good I think each film is, how enjoyable they are. There will be some controversial choices in here. I invite um, comments. Just remember, this is opinion piece, not a. There's no right or wrong answer. Without further ado, I'll get into my rankings. I'm ranking last to first, and in last place I put Casino Royale from 1967. This movie is an incoherent mess. There's very few funny things in it. They spent a lot of money on this and had a lot of acting talent, but they just chose to use all of that the wrong way. The funniest part of the movie is something you actually have to have read the book or see the 2006 version of the movie to even get the joke. If you look in the upper right hand corner, you see Peter Sellers here, who's playing one of the characters that played James Bond in the film, because a whole bunch of people are called James Bond in the movie. They thought that was funny. Um, he's sitting in that chair, and Orson Welles, who plays Le Chiffre, who's the bad guy, tells him to never mind the hole in the chair. He's having it reupholstered, which is a reference to the fact that Le Chiffre in the book uses a carpet beater on Bond's privates, and there's a hole in the chair that he uses to hit through. You can even see the carpet beater sitting there in the shot. The movie starts out with Peter Niven, who's the guy that's in his pajamas, I guess, proclaiming he's the one true, only real James Bond, and the other James Bond is an imposter. It makes several references to Sean Connery being in the imposter Bond, which I think kind of is a middle finger to the whole series. The two interesting things about it: one is the way it came into being. Before selling the rights to adapt James Bond to film for all of his books, Ian Fleming sold the rights to the Casino Royale book out first, and it eventually these rights came into the hands of a guy named Charles Feldman. Feldman refused to sell those rights to Eon Productions. He wanted to make a Casino Royale in conjunction with them, but they refused to make the movie in conjunction. They had actually made Thunderball in conjunction with another guy because of issues over rights, which I assume that's why they didn't want to do that again. And the only other interesting thing about the movie really is Ursula Andress, who played Honey Rider. You can see a picture of her as Honey Rider, who's the most iconic Bond girl because of that scene when she emerges from the ocean. She plays Vesper Lynd in this movie, who's actually the probably the most iconic Bond girl character because of the Daniel Craig era. So I thought that it was just kind of an interesting thing. The problem with doing a spoof is that sometimes they just don't stand the test of time. But the Austin Powers movies did spoofs of the James Bond movies from this era, and they do stand the test of time. If you want to watch a Bond spoof, I'd say watch one of the first two Austin Powers movies. The third one, Goldmember, is not as good as the other two, so I wouldn't watch that one unless you want to watch all three. I'll choose one of the other ones. But like I said, I would not recommend watching this movie. I don't think it'll be controversial. That's last place here. Next movie on my list is Never Say Never Again. This was Sean Connery returning to the role of James Bond. In this movie, basically they do make it a fact that he is older, an older agent. But if the picture here, he looks young because they have his hair looking all dark, and it's I don't know if that's was animated or whatever. But if you watch the movie, he looks like he's probably about looks like he's in his early 60s, probably about 62, 63. Um, so he actually looked quite a bit older than he was because he actually was 51 or 52. He looks tired. He looks like he's just going through the motions. He was very well paid for this movie. They gave him a $3 million check and a percentage of the total profits from the movie, which $3 million may not sound like a lot, but for the first six Bond movies he was in, he only made about $3.5 million. So that $3 million was a pretty big payday at the time. And actually, when he got the 1.25 million for Diamonds Are Forever, I think that was the then record that anyone got to make a movie. A couple notes here. Max von Sydow, who's pictured with the cat, does an excellent job playing Blofeld. I think he just isn't in many scenes. Also, not pictured as Bernie Casey. He does a good job as Felix Leiter. I think he's the best Felix Leiter that we had before the Daniel Craig era. I believe that his Felix Leiter was the best one overall, though. Jeffrey Wright, I think, in both cases, both guys could have been used more. I'm actually kind of surprised that the official, maybe they didn't want to take him because he wasn't this movie. I think it would have been cool if he would have made it over to the Eon Productions in some iteration as Felix Leiter because he did a really good job and deserved it. Kim Basinger's in the movie as Domino. The guy next to her, I don't even know his name, but he played Largo, although the first name's different. Fatima Blush is the character in the upper right. She's basically must be like Fiona Volpe, but Fiona Volpe was way better in Thunderball. This is basically a re-adaptation of Thunderball. Basically, Kevin McClory, who was the producer on this, was writing a screenplay with Ian Fleming to make a Bond movie. But that fell through. Ian Fleming wrote the book Thunderball with some of the elements of that screenplay. Um, I'm not going to say who wrote what parts because I don't know, and I don't think anybody really does know. But Ian Fleming didn't credit McClory in the book, so there was a legal battle, and they settled with McClory getting the movie rights and Fleming getting the book rights. That's why the movie Thunderball had McClory as a producer on it. Um, and this movie is basically just a retelling of the story. It's slower paced. It's not energetic. I think Fatima Blush, who people really like, just went too over the top. She starts out all right, but she just gets crazier and crazier as the movie goes. She dresses more over the top. This movie also seemed like they were trying to. Half the time it seemed like they were trying to make a serious Bond movie. The other half the time it seemed like they were trying to make a spoof. It just didn't work. So it's why it's 26th here for me. The next movie is No Time to Die. To me, this is the Bond movie that does everything wrong. I think it's actually lucky that it doesn't rate below No Time below Never Say Never Again, but it is better than that. The two things I really like: Felix Wright as about Felix Wright. Sorry, Jeffrey Wright as Felix Leiter does a great job. I never think that he really got utilized as much as he should have in the five Daniel Craig movies. I do like that they brought back the same actor every time because in the other eras, Felix Leiter was always played by somebody different. I like that continuity. But the thing I like the best is Anna de Armas as Paloma. I think most fans would agree that she was the best part of the movie. Um, she has great chemistry with Daniel Craig, and he seemed to even be having fun in the scenes where she was at. But through the rest of the movie, he just seems to be bored with it and only there to make the money. In fact, most of the people in this film look like they're only doing it at gunpoint, or maybe someone's got their family held hostage making them do this. They kill Bond at the end of the movie. They don't have to. Um, he's infected with nanobots that can attack certain DNA, and the DNA they would attack would be his wife, Madeline Swan, and they have a kid. Because if you're closely related, then the nanobots will get both people. Um, Even though he couldn't see them anymore, and I know that says in the movie there would be no cure, the fact is the movie shows you what the cure would be. Nanobots are little electronic machines. An electromagnetic pulse, which he has in his watch, would fry the nanobots. So if you put them in front of an EMP machine, they'd be done. So literally, they didn't think through the science of the movie. Plus, the whole nanobots thing was a bad thing to add into the story. This is the longest Bond film. It's over 2 hours and 40 minutes, and it really could do with cutting probably at least a half hour of runtime out of it. The lady in the bottom right, um, she plays a very annoying character named Nomi. I'm not going to say anything about her as an actress because she probably did the role as good as you could, but the character is awful. One of my least favorite Bond characters ever. Um, I the only thing that was maybe as bad as she is in this movie is the A View to a Kill actress that was the Bond girl in that. I can't think of her name for some reason, but that's the only one that I would think that would be as bad. Tanya Roberts, that's who it is. I could see her being considered worse because she screams the whole movie, but she's just so disrespectful of Bond. She's basically trying to show him up the whole time and rub his nose to the fact that she's the new 007. I don't like the fact he just kind of stands there and takes it the whole time and never makes the quip back to her, never has any banter back to her. He just kind of lets her be this awful person to him. The only thing he says is, when she says something about being 007, he says, it's just a number. Like, I don't care. It doesn't mean anything to me. He's supposedly been retired for like 5 years. So he probably doesn't care that she was given that number because it'd be like if you worked at a grocery store and someone got the cash register you got to use every day. Would you care? I mean, I know it's not as mundane as working at a grocery store, but I don't like that part. The main villain's a guy named Safin. Safin goes to kill Madeline Swan's family early in the movie, and they tell the story in the previous movie. And the way they tell the story in the previous movie, it sounds like she killed the man that went to her house, but in this version, she didn't kill him, and he could have killed her, but he saves her life, showing that he just doesn't kill innocent people. And she was the daughter of the man who killed his family, so it doesn't make any sense that once he, accomplishes his goal of killing everybody in Spectre, that he would then decide, what the hell, I'll just kill everybody in the world now. They never show any motivation why he changed from wanting to get revenge on Spectre to wanting to destroy the world. And they used nanobots to kill everybody. I think it would have been just a better movie if at the beginning of the movie, instead of showing the scene that really has no stakes, because you know that Madeline makes it through that scene because she tells the story in the previous movie, have her get killed by Safin, have that draw James Bond back into the service, have him find out that this guy's killing members of Spectre, and he thought she was a member of Spectre because she was Blofeld's personal psychiatrist, and then have him go around killing individual members of Spectre, and he teams up with Paloma, who everybody loved and wanted to see more of. And every step of the way, Safin's a step or two ahead of Bond until the climatic finish. I mean, and at the end, if it's a really good movie, you can either have Bond win or Safin win at the end. I think if you did it right, it would have worked. But when you have Bond just stand there waiting to get hit in the face with the warhead, it's not a satisfying end to have Bond get killed when he doesn't have to die and have a very unimpressive villain that you can't even decipher what his actual motivations are to kill him. So killing Bond, he gets married again to Marianne, or gets married to Mrs. Swan, to Madeline Swan, not Marianne. He has a kid. It's kind of like he's, Homer Simpson, except he's a secret agent on top of it. Nobody wants to see Bond as just a regular, average, everyday family man. That's not the Bond they want to see. So I think they made a mistake. If you take a big risk like that, it better pay off, because if it doesn't, it's going to blow up in your face, and this movie blows up in their face. I know some fans like this movie, but I think it's that a lot of people want to like Daniel Craig's final film in the series because some of the other films are pretty iffy. Number 24 on my list is On Her Majesty's Secret Service. When I first started looking at the rankings of Bond films right about the time Casino Royale came out, this one was usually in last place or one of the very lowest rated movies. Um, I think the other ones that were put with it were maybe like A View to a Kill and No Time to Die, but this was usually like bottom of the road. And the reasons why is because George Lazenby never acted in anything, and he couldn't act in this movie. He was very awful, very wooden. Um, Also, same thing with it. Also has a lot of breaks with continuity from previous movies because he's seen Blofeld before, but they meet in this movie, and it's like neither one of them seen the other one, even though they met in the previous movies. So that's a break from stuff that's already happened within the movies. So that's not very good. I think that Telly Savalas was a terrible Blofeld, not because he's a bad actor. It was just really bad casting because we already had Donald Pleasance, who did a great job. They decided to replace him with Telly Savalas. I don't know if they did it. They said they wanted someone more physical, but you don't need a physical Blofeld. He has henchmen for that. I think if you'd had Telly Savalas as a operative at the level of either Largo or a henchman, I think he would have worked. He just doesn't work as Blofeld. I also don't buy the love story because through much of the film, you can tell Diana Rigg. There's even parts toward the end where she just doesn't seem like she wants to be there doing this film. Maybe she just was put off by how bad of an actor Lazenby was, but she seems like she can't be bothered to be around James Bond until they get to a montage about halfway through the film. It's like a 3 minute montage. It shows them having a nice afternoon together, and supposedly she's in love with him now, even though she didn't want anything to do with him before that. And the whole plot in this movie is held together by a bunch of coincidences. After saving Tracy at a beach, she happens to be staying at the same hotel he is. Coincidence number one. She goes to the same baccarat table he's playing at and plays baccarat. Coincidence number two. Her dad, who wants Bond to marry her after they have sex one time, like I don't know too many dads that would say, "Okay, that guy you had a one night stand with, that should be your husband." But anyhow, Bond is taken off the Blofeld case. So coincidentally, before this, he needs this guy to tell him where he can find Blofeld, which is coincidence number four. Um, then he find the guy that leads him to Blofeld's lair in the mountains of Switzerland, but he has to escape out at one point. And when he's trying to, blend into the crowd around a busy ice skate rink in Switzerland, guess who's ice skating at Christmas time there? Tracy. Coincidence number five. Why she wouldn't be with her family at Christmas, who knows? Maybe she just figures, I'll just go skating in random cities throughout Europe rather than spending the holidays with my family. Then coincidence number six is after being chased and Tracy drives and they lose the bad guys. They're driving down the road and it's snowing so hard they have to stop off. So they pull into a barn, close the doors, and obviously it's snowing so hard that the tire tracks will be covered. But coincidentally, the first place that Blofeld looks is that barn. It's like six coincidences holding the entire story together. It's not good writing to have everything just happen because of coincidences. There has to be you have to lead from point A to point B to point C. Not well, we need this to happen, so we're gonna have this person be here for no particular reason whatsoever. So I think the writing's bad. They have two fight scenes which are the two worst, in my opinion, special effects scenes in the entire series as far as that goes. And that's comparing them to movies that came out before this, not the ones after, because I know that special effects get better over time. They literally have them choreograph a fight and then speed it up on camera because they couldn't have like throw fake punches at speed. Um, like I said, I just don't think Diana Rigg was right for the part, and maybe that also hurts with Lazenby when you have good actors around him. It kind of highlights how bad he actually is. I do like the actress that played Irma Bunt. She's pictured in the upper right. I think she does a great job. She's she really reminds me a lot of Rosa Klebb. I think she might even have surpassed her in a way. She does a great job in this movie. So that's like to me the one bright spot of the entire movie is her. Otherwise, it's just kind of a mess. I think there's a good reason why Lazenby never became a big actor. I think there's a good reason why they never chose to use this director again on this film. I just don't think this is a very entertaining Bond film. That's why it's 24th out of 27 here. Next up is Spectre at 23. This is another film that's just a complete mess. The biggest issue with this is that it kills all the continuity of the Daniel Craig era. He got a reboot with Casino Royale, which was the 21st film made, and he made 5 films in this series. This was the 4th film in the series. Yeah, he had a well-established bad guy group called Quantum, and they tried because what happened was they got the rights back for Spectre and Blofeld. They decided to just shoehorn that all in there. So if you look at this picture on the bottom right, where it has all the bad guys that Bond faced, it makes all these bad guys like the main tentacles of Spectre, which makes no sense for 2 reasons. Number one, they're saying Spectre was that Quantum was a secret organization within Spectre, which is a secret organization, which doesn't make any sense. But also, most of these guys don't make sense as all being equal bad guys because Mr. White was obviously above Le Chiffre. So I can see Mr. White being a main lieutenant, but not Le Chiffre because he's below Mr. White. Mr. Dominic Green, that does make sense. He would be a main lieutenant. But Patrice and Ciara were both just, assassins, so it doesn't make sense that they would be major tentacles, and why is there not 8 tentacles on an octopus instead of 7? Plus, Silva did things for his own reason. His plot was a revenge plot against M because he basically felt she stabbed him in the back because she basically gave him over, traded him for other agents. So realistically, it makes no sense that he was even a part of Spectre or Quantum at all. They also say that Blofeld is Bond's brother, which makes no sense because they have a picture that they show at one point in the film where Bond is old enough that he would remember if he had a adoptive brother. In the picture, they show Christoph Waltz, and he looks like Christoph Waltz. He just looks like a younger version of himself. Like no one's mistaken these two guys. So Bond should know him, and there should be familiarity between these two. If Blofeld's dad adopted James Bond, there should be familiarity there, and it's just not there. This one has Madeline Swan, who's brought back for No Time to Die. She's cold, uninteresting, and you can tell that she just doesn't. They just don't like each other, but somehow they get together at the end of the movie. It's another love story I just don't buy. They say Blofeld set everything up to get Bond, but in order for him to set everything up, he would have to know that Bond was going to be bumped up to MI6 ahead of time. He would have to know that he's the agent they would choose to send to Montenegro to play poker against Le Chef. You have to know that he would be able to win the entire poker tournament in order to, have Vesper steal the money from him and stab him in the back. You'd also have to know that Bond would fall in love with Vesper, which she never really tried to because she actually is married, so she was just doing her job. So the entirety of Casino Royale is crazy ass convoluted if you believe this film, which I kind of don't. I just think it's a big continuity screw up and I don't count with the rest of the films. Also, all the crazy stuff Silva did, how did Blofeld set all of that up? How would Blofeld know that Bond would end up in Mexico to get Sciarra at the beginning of the movie? That was something that M sent him on. How would he know that would happen? What I'm saying? It's just all the stuff the none of the plot lines can work together. It makes everything so much more convoluted. So for that reason, it basically steals the premise from the Austin Powers movies. It tries to make that the main premise of the Bond movies. The whole "You're my brother" that Goldmember said. So yeah, that's why this one. I think this movie hurts all the other movies within the series that came before it. Plus, Blofeld doesn't act like Blofeld at all. Like Mr. White's pretty good in it. Once again, I think he should have been the main villain in Quantum, but they decided to go a totally different way. But yeah, it doesn't make sense to at all to shoehorn this in. They could have just had Christoph Waltz play the leader of Quantum and just had everything happen as him as the leader of Quantum. But I still think the whole brother thing doesn't work. This is also one of two films where Daniel Craig, you can tell, doesn't want to be there. This one, in No Time to Die, you can really see that he just isn't having fun, doesn't care to be there, just going through the motions for the money. Next movie is Quantum of Solace. I know I'm going to be accused of picking on Daniel Craig, but he had two good movies and three bad ones. Problem with this movie, it's not a standalone movie. They should have had Mr. White as the main villain and had Bond going after Mr. White to avenge Vesper. Instead, they decided to have the guy on the top, Dominic Green, be, a guy whose evil master plan is to sell bottled water at a profit. So that kind of just doesn't make any sense. That's an evil mastermind or some horribly evil bad thing that you need to get the Secret Service to stop. I mean, are they going to go after Aquafina next? I don't know. The middle scene is them trying to make a tip of the hat to Goldfinger. Except this girl's covered in oil because they're supposed to be trying to get oil from the land where they're getting the water from. I just don't understand why they would do this in this manner, other than to make it like Goldfinger, because the guy's thing wasn't oil, it was water. But they do that anyway. Mr. Green's a very uninteresting villain, probably the least interesting villain of the entire Eon Productions. The only one I'd say compares them as being as bad as Gustav Graves. Or actually, I don't like Christoph's Blofeld. That's just a big mess up. His henchman is the least interesting henchman. The guy's named Elvis, although I don't even think they say it in the movie. I do like Camille Montez. She's really good in this movie. She's got to revenge her own. It's basically a revenge plot of her and Bond goes rogue, which they overuse these things, revenge plots and Bond going rogue, throughout the Daniel Craig era. But Camille Montez to me is, other than Paloma, she's my second favorite Bond girl of the Daniel Craig era. I know some people won't like that. I say that. I really enjoy her in this movie. Mr. White's great in the movie, which is why he should have been the main villain, because for the story Bond versus Mr. White, even if Mr. White gets away at the end, you could have had a very satisfying and fun movie because nobody cared about the water thing. People thought they were being punked when they heard that. I actually described it that way one time, and someone said, "I thought you were screwing with me. I thought you were punking me. I didn't think that'd be the real thing." So Quantum of Solace basically it's the shortest Bond film, but there's not much of a plot there. If they would have just made it a Bond versus Mr. White plot, it would have been so much better. But they decided to go with Mr. Green and the evil master plan of selling bottled water at a profit. Um, this is going to be my final one for this. My final one for this episode. This is probably going to be broken into three episodes. I know that a lot of the Craig fans won't like it, but it really is. Those movies just they had this one too. They run the action scenes with the shaky camera and the editing. It's hard to know what's going on, which I think the action scenes would be better if they would have done them right. So it's poorly directed, poorly written. Some good acting from some of the people, but Dominic Green just doesn't do it for me. I like the other Bond girl, Strawberry Fields, who's laying dead there. So it does have a good duo of Bond girls. Has a great secondary villain in Mr. White, but they kind of just fumble all that. It has Felix Leiter in it as well. They kind of fumble all that, though, with the whole Dominic Green water storyline. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and have a great day.